Hello everybody. In today's lesson we're going to look at how to evaluate expressions. Now this is something that can sometimes be called substitution as well. Now this topic falls under the umbrella of something that we call algebra. So in algebra we have two types of number. We call these numbers constants and variables. So we'll have a look at an expression now that uses both of these type of numbers. So we've written out our expression here, 7x minus 3y. Now, the new type of number we're looking at is called a variable, and a variable is just a letter. So this can be used to stand in for any number. Now, we might know that number or we might not know that number. It doesn't really matter, and we'll still treat them the same way. So again, our variables are our letters. What we normally recognize as numbers, we call these constants. So 7 and 3 here are our constants. The reason why we call them constants is because their value does not change. So x or y could be any value. We can put in whatever we want for it. But for the constant, it always stays the same. So it always stays as 7 and 3. Now you might notice that 7x and minus 3y look like two separate little groups. So we call each of those groups a term. So we have 7 multiplied by x, that's one term, and 3 multiplied by y is a different term. Again, this whole thing, when you combine our terms together, we call that an expression. So we'll have a look now at a question that involves evaluating an expression or substituting in an expression. So we're given an expression here. Solve 6x plus 2, and then we're told what to substitute in. So x is equal to 2 is one of the possibilities, and the second part of the question is x is equal to minus 1. So x here again is our variable, and we're going to see what this whole expression would be if x was equal to 2, and then we'd see what the whole expression would equal if x was equal to minus 1. So the first step, as in most questions, is just writing out what we're given. So for part 1, start off on that. We're given the expression 6x plus 2. And it is important to write out the expression as you're given it. The next step is to perform our substitution. So we're being told that our variable x is equal to the number 2. So we're going to substitute in the number 2 instead of x, just like you'd make a substitution on a football team. You take one player off and you'd bring in the other player. So we're going to get rid of x and we're going to bring in 2. Everything else in the expression stays the same. So 6 stays the same. We're going to get rid of x and bring in 2. Now it's important when we bring in 2, we're going to put a bracket around it. And then the number 2 over here stays the same as well. Now, we have 6 with 2 in brackets plus 2. At this point, we can simplify what we've got left and try and solve it out using BIMDIS. So if we look at this, we've got multiplication with our 6 and 2. We've got some addition here as well. So BIMDIS tells us that we should do our multiplication first. So 6 multiplied by 2 gives us 12. We'll keep 2 the same. Then 12 plus 2 gives us 14. So when x is equal to 2, 6x plus 2 gives us 14. For part 2, the process is the exact same. The only difference is that x is now equal to minus 1. So we're going to do the same method out, but instead of subbing in 2 for x, we're going to sub in minus 1. You can try and do this now if you want to pause the video. Press play when you're ready to go through the solution. So, as before, the first thing we're going to do is write out the expression. 6x plus 2 is the expression we're given. The next step, like before, is we're going to make our substitution. So we're going to sub in minus 1 for x. Keep everything else exactly the same. Just write in minus 1 instead of x. Making sure that we put brackets around the minus 1. Now we've got 6 times minus 1 plus 2. The last thing we're going to do, just like before, is use BIMDIS to solve this expression out. So we'll do our multiplication and then we'll do our addition. So 6 times minus 1, a plus times a minus gives us minus, and 6 times 1 gives us 6. So we end up with minus 6 plus 2. This simplifies then when we do our subtraction to minus 4. When we're adding and subtracting, if the signs are different, we find the difference between the numbers and we keep the sign of the bigger number. So the difference between 6 and 2 is 4, and then we keep the sign of the bigger number. So we'll look at the second example now. This example says if a is equal to 2 and b is equal to 1, find the value of 2a minus 6b. The difference in this question is that we now have two variables. We have a and we have b. But everything else is going to still be exactly the same. We'll write out the expression we're given first of all, 2a minus 6b, and we'll then make our substitutions. Again, the only difference this time is that we're subbing in two numbers instead of one. So a we know is equal to 2, so we'll put in 2 instead of our a. And b we know is equal to 1, so we'll put in 1 instead of b. Again, now we're just going to use BIMDIS to simplify this and we'll get out our final answer. So we do our multiplication, 2 by 2 and 6 times 1 first. Then we'll do our subtraction because that's lower down in BIMDIS. So 2 times 2 is 4 and 6 times 1 is 6. Now we're left with 4 minus 6. We can think of this as plus 4 minus 6 as well if we want to. So when adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers, what we're going to do if the signs are different is find the difference between the two numbers. So 4 and 6, the difference is 2. Then keep the sign of the bigger number, which is our minus 6 here. So this means the answer for this question is minus 2 if we evaluate this expression here, 2a minus 6b. So the last example we'll look at today is example 3 here. And the difference here again is that we have 3 terms instead of 1 or 2. So we've got a, b and c. A is equal to minus 4, b equals 3 and c is equal to 6. And they want us to find the value of this expression, b times c minus a. So as before, our first step is to just write out the expression including the variables. Do not skip out this step because it'll cost you marks in an exam, like your junior cert. So the next step that we're going to do is sub in each of these variables. So we've got b, which we know is 3. Then instead of these brackets, we're going to put in slightly different brackets with square edges, just so we can tell the difference between the old brackets and the new ones that we're putting in. So c, we know is 6, so we'll sub in 6 here. Again, put in our normal curvy brackets. Then a, we just have to be really careful with because a is equal to minus 4. So you have to make sure to bring in that minus sign too. Now again, all that's left to do is to use BIMDIS to simplify what we still have here. So the first thing that we would simplify is what's inside this larger set of brackets. So we're going to look at simplifying 6 minus minus 4. Now whenever we have two signs together, we have to be really careful to think about what they mean. We've already come across this when we're doing integers, but just to refresh your memory, the signs are the same when we've got two signs together. That means it's going to end up as a positive. If the signs are different, then it'll end up as a negative. These are the same rules we actually use for multiplying positive and negative numbers. 2 positives gives you a positive, a negative times a negative gives you a positive. Positive times a negative gives you a negative, and a negative times a positive gives you a negative. So easiest way to remember them, if you got two signs right next to each other, just use the rules for multiplication and that'll give you the new combined sign. So here we've got a negative and a negative. So we can rewrite this. getting rid of our two negatives and just putting in a positive sign there instead. So now we've got 6 plus 4 in our brackets. Nothing else has changed so far. So again, our plan is to solve the inside bracket here first. I know both of these numbers have brackets around them, but we can't actually simplify these brackets anymore. And there's nothing to multiply them against, so we can actually kind of get rid of those brackets now. Or else just pretend they're not there. I'm going to rub them out just so you have the visual effect. So we have 6 plus 4 now, which gives us 10. We've simplified that larger bracket with the square edges. Then outside we've got 3. Now remember, two brackets next to each other must be multiplied. So this tells us to do the bracket first, which we've done, and now we do our multiplications. So 3 multiplied by 10 is 30. This is definitely a harder example of a question, probably made hardest by the fact that we have a double sign here. So if you see something like that, don't stress out too much. Just look at this table here for reference. You might want to take it down the back of your copy again.